I? That is the most essential question. I've actually been a seeker the most of my life, in the sense that I always wondered about what is really going on. What is this amazing, amazing experience that we're having, that we're calling life? All of a sudden I find myself in this body. I'm here in this amazing existence, and it seems to me, beyond the impossible. So what are we doing here? And what is this reality? All these, what is called the eternal questions, has been puzzling me all my life, and I'm absolutely sure that most people wonder about these things. What is this? Who am I? What are we doing? And this, there is a deep basic frustration of living lives that we do not understand. Of course, there is all kinds of philosophies which sent me to philosophy studies once upon a time, and sent me into searching through yoga, meditation, spiritual paths, and so on. And after many years of searching, I'm kind of at least a little bit wiser than I was when I started, and I do have some ideas about who I am. This is not my ideas. That's really important to point out, because I am just referring to wisdom traditions that has been around for a very long time. My reference point is basically Advaita Vedanta. Advaita means non-dual Vedanta, and but of course I have reference to other spiritual paths like Christianity, Buddhism, yoga, and so on. But basically, the bottom line is the ancient wisdom going all the way back to the Vedas, and which is expressed in this knowledge tradition. So this is not my ideas of who I am, but it's my interpretation of Vedanta, and whatever I say which is not in accordance with the tradition and not in accordance with this understanding is my responsibility. So this is not my kind of personal philosophy, and it's not an expression of a religion or a belief, because this method is called self-inquiry, in the sense that we're investigating our own experience of reality. So there's actually nothing you need to believe here, but you just take step by step logical steps from those points where we actually can know something for true. And then the question is there anything we can know for certain that is true? And there is one thing which you can know absolutely for sure that is truth, and that is that you exist. Have you thought about that? You cannot deny that you exist. It's meaningless to say I don't exist, and it's also meaningless to say I'm not conscious. So that's the only truth about who I am, or the only truth that I can know, is that I'm conscious and that I exist. And then I can say, well, how do I know that? Well, I just know it. I don't need any external confirmation. I can sit in a dark room with my eyes closed and I will know that I exist. And I will know that I'm conscious. Okay, I'm sleeping at night, and then I would probably deny that I was conscious during sleep. But when I wake up the next morning, I knew I slept well. So I had to be there in order to know that I slept well. And I will also be annoyed and irritated if someone wakes me up during my nice sleep. So there is an awareness here. And so consciousness is not a easy concept to really grasp, because it goes way beyond your normal waking state consciousness or your dream state consciousness. But in fact, there is also consciousness in deep sleep. Okay, we're going a little bit ahead of ourselves now. But the point is that this is a method of self-inquiry where we start from this point. We start from this point that I know that I exist, I know that I'm conscious. That's a good starting point. And the rest is more or less logical steps in order to get a broader picture and a broader perspective on who I am. So there is a short answer and there is a more deeper and complex answer to the question. And the short answer is, because everybody knows who they are. They say, okay, I am this body, I'm this person, I have these relationships, I have this job, I have this age, I live in a country, and I have a certain place at night where I place my body to go to sleep, and so on. So this is the identity that we do have. This is the normal identity, I'm being this person, so and so. And if I am in a party and someone says, who are you? I will always make reference to something that I'm not. I will make a reference to my body, I will make a reference to the people I know, to the relationships, and so on. But all of these things, if you investigate it as well, am I my body? Well, I'm experiencing my body. But am I my thoughts? Well, I'm experiencing my thoughts. So as I say, there is a deep answer and there is a short answer. And the short answer everybody knows, and most people think it's really uncomplicated of who they are. But if you go into it, as we're going to do in these talks, then we're going to get a grasp on this and finding out that actually asking who I am is the question of asking what is existence and what is consciousness. So that's why Know Thyself was the inscription in the academy in Athens in antiquity, because the philosophers at that time probably considered that as the most essential question. So starting from this, so you could say that who am I? The kind of the puzzling part, the question is, who is asking the question? And it's a little bit like having two mirrors in front of each other and looking into these mirrors, and it goes on into eternity. And that's actually where we end up with this question. We end up in eternity. And eternity and now is the same. Many people think that eternity is something that goes on forever, but it's not, because there is no time in eternity. Likewise, in the moment, there is no time in the moment. So the eternity and now is the same. So this is actually where we end up. We end up in the dimension outside of time and space, where existence and consciousness is outside of time and space. Okay, so this is going to be kind of heavy duty for some, and we're trying to take it stepwise, step by step, and get a deeper grasp on the most essential question, who am I? So this is the first lecture. This is just the introduction, just some ideas to say that there is an easy answer, which is the person that I think I am, and there is a deeper dimension to it when you start to investigating who is asking the question, who am I? The question, who am I, is a purely scientific question, where science means to investigate our experience and to investigate the world we live in. And here is the difference between, there is two different approaches in the Western approach and the Eastern approach to this question. And Western science has not really concerned itself too much with consciousness or who I am, but Western science takes it for granted that there is a subject that can observe the world. So Western science starts out with saying, oh hey, here is an extremely fascinating world. What's going on here? Here is planets and stars and mountains and flowers and animals and human beings and all amazing things is going on here. And so let's start investigating what is happening. How does this all work? And so then we have developed Western science with an amazing, amazing knowledge into the natural world of different phenomena. But it's still based on a model that the subject, the person, is able to stand outside of this reality and observe it. And then you paint yourself into a corner because you cannot exclude yourself from reality. You cannot stand, there is no place to stand outside of reality and observe it, because I am a part of the reality. So this question has been not impressingly been dealt with, neither in Western philosophy or in science. It's just been taken for granted. There is this subject that can observe the world. So in the East, they have taken a completely different approach, because they have said, okay, well, fair enough, there is this amazing world out there, and it would be really nice to find out how it works, but how can I know anything about the world if I don't know who I am? How can I know anything about the world if I don't know who I am, who is observing and experiencing the world? So they turned the question inwards instead and said, well, I better find out who I am first, and then we can start talking about the world, or the external world, or wherever the world is. Because it looks like the world is outside there somewhere, but, actually, the world is in me. If you take a hard look on it, you think that you're seeing these glasses that I hold in my hand. It kind of looks like they're in my hand, but in fact, the glasses are in my mind. And anything, you have a sensation, you have a smell, it's all happening in the mind. So the mind is like this computer screen or TV screen or film screen where everything is happening. So we think that there is an external world out there, but in fact, everything goes on in my mind. Life is a state of mind. So this is what happened in the East. And so therefore, they developed, as much as you could say that the West has an external science, the East developed an internal science. And then finding out that who am I is actually discovering just as much the external world, and it's just actually the same question of finding out what is reality, but there is just two different approaches, and looking outside or looking inside. So the interesting thing today is that Western science and Eastern approaches is really merging, because Western science doesn't really, if you go into physics, the theoretical physics and so on, they don't actually believe in the materialistic model anymore, because if you investigate molecules and atoms and pre-atomic particles, you come to energy and you finally come to nothing. And so the whole materialistic concept actually dissolves theoretically, that everything consists of energy and everything is actually coming out of nothing, coming out of oneness. And but science has not so far been able to take the consequence of this, that actually what everything comes out of is existence and is a consciousness, but which is what the East has been saying all along. So you could say that yoga is the science of the East, and science is the yoga of the West, where yoga meaning to unite the individual consciousness with the universal consciousness, or basically finding out who we are. So two different approaches, the Western approach and the Eastern approach. In the continuation of the difference between the Western approach and the Eastern approach to reality, there is also a main difference between two philosophical approaches, which is materialism versus idealism. And in the Western world, our worldview is basically materialistic. And that means that we think that the physical reality is real, and that the matter and the physical stuff like atoms and molecules and stones and rocks and what we actually can take and touch and feel, we think that this is the basis of reality, and that thoughts, feelings, consciousness is a result of matter, which in principle means that a stone, if a stone can develop itself long enough through a process of evolution, you will end up being able to play chess with a stone, or it will end up getting self-conscious. That is a very difficult logical step to take, and the materialistic model really breaks down into some logical catastrophes and complete breakdown. Because if consciousness and I am a product of matter, then I'm basically a machine. And when I cannot have free will, I have to be completely predestined, and I have to be programmed. And then who did the programming, and so forth. So this is called the hard body-mind problem in science, in trying to explain consciousness and how consciousness can come out of matter. So Descartes, he tried to solve the riddle once upon a time. He was one of the initiators to Western philosophy in the Middle Ages, or the end of the Middle Ages, in the time of Enlightenment and so on. And he suggested this split between mind and matter, between spirit and matter. And he split it up into two worlds. And without being able to explain how ideas and thoughts and consciousness was able to transfer into the physical material world. And he ended up with an explanation that the human being basically was a machine. So, but this is not, this is very different to our own experience of ourselves. We treat human beings and machines completely differently. There is another quality to us that makes us human. So materialism is basically inhuman, completely. But that is unfortunately the worldview that is present in the world, at least in the Western world, and is completely dominating the world. And this is what everybody just takes for real. So you could argue that when you go into theoretical physics and so on, there is a different worldview, because then matter doesn't really exist. That actually we live in space, and but still, it's still materialistic. They're not able to get this model right, and because you need to have to take you have to change to a completely different philosophical perspective, which is idealism. And in materialism, the idea is that matter is the cause, that everything started with a Big Bang, and then through matter everything evolves. Of course, with some very logical problems of who delivered the materials for the Big Bang and so on. So basically, coming out of nothing, this is actually impossible that anything can come out of matter, out of nothing. And actually, it is also a question that within Vedanta or idealistic philosophy, there is no answer to this question, because consciousness doesn't have any beginning, existence doesn't have any beginning, because non-existence is not possible. You cannot say that if you go into space somewhere and say, here is the end of the world, and there is no end to the world, because what's outside of that? Exactly, and you say, here is nothing. Well, I am here to say that there is nothing. So non-existence is not possible. And so consciousness and existence doesn't have a beginning. Simple as that. And this is just something that we have to accept, although it is actually impossible to understand. That it's just completely beyond the mind, and is this enigma and mystery that we simply have to live with and just accept. So, but the so in contrast to the materialistic point of view that says that matter is the cause of creation and all phenomenon, the idealistic point of view is the complete opposite. The complete opposite, that consciousness is the main cause. That life is a consciousness phenomenon. Life is basically a dream. And this was like philosophers like Plato said that, and this is implied in all mythologies and religions. Like in the Bible, in the first sentence of the Bible, it says, "In the beginning God created heaven and earth." So, but that means that before the beginning, God was. And so there was something before the beginning. So meaning that God has always been. Exactly. So, and out of this, whatever God is, we will come back to that, whatever God is, out of this, creates this polarity of heaven and earth. You will find that in other mythologies like the Taoistic of yin and yang, that in the beginning there was Tao, and then out of the Tao it polarized into two forces, yin and yang, the active and the passive, the masculine and the feminine, the dark and the light, the cold and the warm, so and so forth. Or in Hinduism, like Shiva and Shakti, with the masculine force and the feminine force, and so on. And within the cross, the Christian cross of a vertical line and a horizontal line is an expression of this polarity, or in the yin-yang sign is an expression of this polarity. So the idealistic point of view is that it's consciousness, it's out of existence itself, which is the cause of creation. But this is very difficult to understand and grasp because I'm seeing through materialistic glasses. And when I studied philosophy once upon a time, I couldn't understand Plato at all, because what is this guy talking about? That the ideas is creating the world, you know. And I think that most people don't understand Plato at all, where he's coming from, unless you have a background in idealism and can understand that actually the idealistic perspective is possible. So in order to grasp how is this real? How can this world be a dream world when it is when we experience it so real? So how can this be a dream world? It seems very hard to grasp. So, but I tell you this, you know, this is not the reason the world is not real. Simple as that. This is not real. What I mean by real is something that doesn't change. That is real. If something lasts for 10 years and then dissolves, it's not real. If it lasts for 1,000 years and it dissolves, it's still not real. A mountain can look very real, but within 1,000,000 years it's dissolved, and eventually this whole world will dissolve. But we don't need to go that far. We can just say, what about yesterday? What happened to yesterday? Where is yesterday now? It is gone. If yesterday was real, we should be able to bring it back and say, hey, that was a good day. We want to experience that one more time. Or where is your life up until this moment? It's also gone. So when we take a look at life, you know, life is a constant movement. There is something moving all the time. And so life is really like a piece of music. Like, you can only enjoy the music as long as the music is playing. The moment you stop the music, there is no music anymore. And so this is the real enigma here, that there is something that change can only happen, has only meaning on the background in reference to something that is not changing. that I should have a concept of that I'm so and so old and I've lived so and so long can only be in reference to something that doesn't change. And what does not change is consciousness and existence. That is the permanent factor. It's a little bit like a movie. You could say that the movie screen doesn't change. It's the same movie screen all the time, but the film keeps changing all the time. And the movie screen is completely unaffected by whatever film is being shown. So when you investigate our reality, it's not as real as we think. So reality is really this dream world that is a expression of energy. So as long as there is energy in motion, there is a world. This is similar to computers, in the sense that if you whatever happens on the computer screen is the mathematical combinations of two figures, 0 and 1. And through these mathematical combinations, the various digital signals is able to create this whole virtual reality that you experience on a computer screen. And this virtual reality has become pretty big now that we got internet, and internet is growing every day because more and more websites is being created, more and more films is being uploaded, more and more experience is being expressed through the internet. So it's infinite, but the foundation of internet is energy. If you unplug the electricity in all computers of the world, there is no internet anymore. It's gone. Simple as that. And the same with this world. It's created principally in the same way. So if you take out the energy and unplug the energy from this world, there is no world. Simple as that. Gone. But existence and consciousness will still be unaffected. So in the sense that God was there before the beginning. And so if something has a beginning, it also has an end. So there is two dimensions here. In the same way as there is one dimension of this person that I think I am and my consciousness, there is two dimensions to reality. One dimension that is outside of time and space, where there is no time, where there's no space. There is only existence. And that is the only reality. That is real. That is the only reality. And I am this reality because I know I'm conscious. I know I exist. That's maybe a leap to take, right? But I cannot deny my existence. I cannot deny I'm conscious. And that doesn't change. You could say, okay, I became conscious when I was born. No, the body was born. But consciousness has been there all along. Consciousness all of a sudden just wakes up in this body and says, here I am. This happens every morning. Here I am again. I'm awake again, right? But I've been awake all the time. Consciousness is awake all the time. But anyway, so the point being that life is this energetic phenomenon, and what is real is consciousness and existence. That is the only thing that doesn't change, and because it doesn't change, it is real. You cannot get rid of it. Simple as that. It has no beginning, it has no end. It's just there. And you cannot deny its existence. And life, although it seems to be real, it is a dream. It is. I'm not saying that the world doesn't exist. Likewise, with a dream at night exists, but the next morning, where's the dream? It's gone, right? And the same thing with your life up until now. Where is it now? It's gone. And so life is just what happens in this constant movement. And you cannot hold on to it. All you have is now. All you have is this moment. That is life. That's all there is. That's as good as it gets. So we better enjoy it, right? So let's say the thing is that how can this world come out of existence? So if we imagine, we can imagine that there is this swimming pool, and there is this. In one ways, it's an unlimited swimming pool, but we'll just imagine it's a swimming pool. And this is before anything is created. And so the water is just completely still. And so if you look into the water, there's absolutely no experience. This is before the world is created. So there is only consciousness in the sense that there is just nothing. There is awareness and consciousness, and if there is no experience. If you look into the swimming pool, there is absolutely no waves or whatever. Everything is completely still, no experience. So what happens is all of a sudden you get a world. All of a sudden energy arises in this pool for complete unexplained reason. That's the big mystery. So there happens a polarization because of this. And so you get energy, you get two different forces, and then you get this spiral or a wave in the water, and then you say, well, now there is something to experience. And then there is an object, and an object that has a beginning and has an end. It lasts for a certain time, and there is an experience. And so what happens in this swimming pool that you get another whirl, and you get another whirl, and you get still another whirl, and eventually this becomes very, very complex. In the end of the day, you get a complete world. And it's actually just the same that happens in a computer, in the sense that you start up with two signals, 1 and 0, and then you make these mathematical combination of worlds and worlds and worlds and worlds, and then finally you get this big virtual reality on a computer screen everywhere around the world. And in principle, we can imagine that it's a similar thing that happens to this world, but the thing is that the graphics in this world is just so amazingly real that we think it's real. And we're being actually fooled by it. So, but this is basically the difference between materialism and idealism. And so idealism is a philosophical perspective which says that consciousness is the main cause of creation. That consciousness and existence is the main cause, and life is a consciousness phenomenon. So this has a purely logical foundation, but it's hard to understand because we're so hardwired into the materialistic point of view, and it's very difficult to grasp that this world that is so solid and so convincing. If you get hit by a car, or if you get a toothache, or if you get hungry, this reality, this is real. I mean, who can doubt that? But when you analyze it and investigate it logically, it doesn't hold up. It dissolves, and it is a dream world. And so I'm not saying that the world doesn't exist. Like, I don't say a dream doesn't exist, but it is a dream world. And what is the only reality is consciousness. The only reality is existence. And I am conscious and I am existence. So I am real. I am reality. I am this reality. So, but I don't experience that. So this has huge consequences. But this is a starting point, just to get a grasp on this, to understand the difference between the materialistic point of view and the idealistic point of view. The Greek philosopher Plato is considered an idealistic philosopher. And I am pretty convinced that he was schooled. He must have taken some trips to India and was influenced by Indian philosophy or the Vedas, because this is completely the same way, the same view of the world that you find in Indian philosophy, or particularly in Vedanta, Advaita Vedanta. But it's not completely fully expressed. But he's particularly famous for the Allergory of the cave, where this view is being presented in a pretty very clear way. And so the Allergory of the cave is the illustration that Plato gives, that life is a dream, that we're living in a dream world. And so the image is that there is this ancient movie theater where there are slaves who are sitting inside a cave, and they're chained to the floor, and also their heads are fixed in a certain position, so they can't turn their heads. They can only look forward, and they can only look onto the screen. And onto the screen there's all kinds of experiences, but what the slaves can't see is that there is someone standing behind them and holding up various forms and shapes and sticks and shablongs and so on, and there is a light source behind them. And so this light source projects all these images onto the screen. And so the slaves, they think that what is happening on the screen is reality. And so this is our predicament. This is our situation, because we are chained to the floor through our ignorance, because we don't understand how this movie works. And that would be just the same if you went to a movie theater and you didn't understand how it worked. You would thought that what was going on the screen was reality. It would be a nightmare. That happened to me when I was a child. My brother took me to a movie when I was 6 years old or something like that. I was too young to go to the movies, and with all the kids were laughing and screaming and thought it was really funny, with cars crashing and people falling down from high houses and so on. I thought it was a nightmare. It was terrible. I was crying all the time. And that's what happens if you think that this world is real. It can become a nightmare when things doesn't go our way. And so the point what Plato is trying to explain is how that life is this projection, and that it's consciousness being the light source, which is the cause of what is happening on the screen. And so Plato says it's only a rare slave who is able to break up the chains and see that he's actually free and can walk out and unite himself with the light source. So this is our situation, and we are ignorant about how the world works because we think it's real. We think what is happening, what we're experiencing in our minds, or the way we experience the world, we think it is real. And so we're trapped in this world. So we're slaves, simple as that. And we're being limited because we don't understand. We're living lives we do not understand. Simple as that. So the Allergory of the cave is where Plato is trying to explain that life is a dream, and there is two dimensions here. That there is the light source that doesn't change and is unaffected by what is ever going on the screen. So our challenge is to understand how the movie works, and when we do, we can start enjoying the film. And that's why it's nice to see a film, because we know it's an illusion, we know it's a dream world, we know it's a film, and therefore we can relax and eat our popcorn in peace, right? And so what this work does is that when you realize how the world works, you can start enjoying life. You can completely relax. You can become completely fearless of life, because you're going to be unaffected. Nothing can happen to you. Likewise, when you see a film, you're unaffected by the film. When someone is shooting up at the screen, you know you're not going to get shot. Or if they travel to the North Pole and it's going to get freezing cold, you don't need to put on warm clothes, because you know that you're unaffected, and you can participate in these experiences from the outside. And that's very enjoyable, because there is this freedom when you see a film. And so the invitation through this knowledge is that you can live your life in the same way. You can live your life with the same freedom of being completely fearless towards life, because you know that life can't do you any harm. You know that you're unaffected by the world. But this does not mean that you shouldn't engage in the world. You should still participate, but you become an actor in the sense that you, in the back of your mind, you know that this is just a game. This is a dream world that I'm participating in. So there is a step, several steps to get to this, and just to understand this is a very small beginning, but it's a necessary beginning, because without the understanding of this, you're not going to get anywhere. So, but there is a difference between understanding this perspective and realizing this perspective. So, because the programming of believing that this world is real is so deeply ingrained in my subconscious and my habits and in the language and so on, that to deprogram myself is not an easy task. And this is what we can do for a long, long time, or for the rest of our lives, really, to become self-realized when we go from self-knowledge to self-realization. But we will come to that. Plato had his take on life being a dream, and we being slaves of the world if we don't know how the world works. And there is a similar allergy, or an ancient story from India, which is similar and has some of the same points. And this is a story about a man who had been walking all day, and he was getting tired, and it was starting to become dark. It was in the twilight. It was not quite dark, and it was not day anymore. So it was in the twilight zone. And he's getting thirsty, and he's approaching this well. And he becomes really happy because he was so thirsty and so tired. But when he comes to the well, he freezes because all of a sudden he sees a cobra. And he doesn't know what to do. You know, he can either, if he moves forwards, it's going to attack him. If he moves backwards, it's going to attack him. So he completely freezes and is completely paralyzed by fear. And so he doesn't know what to do. And so this old man comes along and says, "Hey, what's going on, man? You look so anxious. Are you having some troubles?" "Yeah, can't you? Yeah. Can't you see the cobra snake? You know." And so watch out, it's about to attack. And so the old man says, no, take it easy, man. It's not a cobra. This is the well rope. And around here we tie the well rope into a curl like this, so it might look like a cobra. And so then he saw it was the well rope, and so he laughed and relaxed. And so that's the story. And so the point here is that we're not seeing the world as it is, and we're being completely terrified by the world because we interpret the world in the wrong way. And so we're being afraid of something that there is no cause of being afraid of. And when we analyze the situation, then we understand that there's nothing to be afraid of, and we can relax and we can enjoy the water from the well of wisdom. And the man here, the old man, he symbolizes knowledge, because we cannot, if it wasn't for the old man, this person, he wouldn't be able to find out what was going on. He would be completely paralyzed. And so we need knowledge. We need someone who can actually explain how the world works, who can actually explain what reality is. And so this is the knowledge, this is the wisdom traditions, and this is there are several wisdom traditions, and many pointing out actually the same thing in different languages. But I must admit that I find particularly Advaita Vedanta as a very, very clear source, and where these truths are being expressed very, very clearly. It's also present in Christianity, and I also must think that Buddhism is a very clear expression, although it's a different language, but still they are actually saying the same things, as do also Christianity, but much more hidden in Christianity. You need to crack the symbolic codes in order to press the juice out of that spiritual tradition, which unfortunately most people don't. But so that was the snake and the rope story. And another point in this story is that it's in the twilight zone. And twilight meaning that if this has happened during the day, when there was complete light, he wouldn't make this mistake, right? And if there was complete darkness, he would neither also be able to make the mistake, because then he wouldn't be able to see anything, right? And so this is our predicament. This is our situation, that we are we're having some knowledge, and there is knowledge and ignorance side by side, and this is what creates confusion. So if we're completely enlightened, have the full understanding as in the day of light, there is no problem. And if we have complete ignorance, there is also no problem, in the sense that no brain, no trouble. If you don't ask these questions and you don't wonder about anything, then you're living in complete darkness, and you're not going to get this. Then you don't have any fear of what life whatsoever, because you don't reflect upon anything. So there is no reason to be afraid of anything, because fear is your own thoughts. Fear is a result of your own imagination. So if you don't have imagination, you're going to be free from thought, but you're also not going to have any. I mean, you're not going to have much of a life to worry about. So most people prefer that, being so dumbed down and so passive and so unreflective. So that they're not even in the twilight zone; they're in the complete darkness. So this is where the search starts, and we need the knowledge. We need the old man to wake us up and point out how that the rope is not actually a cobra. So there is nothing to fear once you really understand how the world works. In this reality, there are two categories. There is the subject, and there are the objects. And ignorance is basically a confusion between the subject and the object. But we have to understand the difference between the subject and the object. What is the subject, and what is an object? And we learned that in school when we said Peter goes to school, where Peter is the subject and the school is the object. And that is, the teacher probably didn't go more into depth about this very, very essential distinction between the subject and an object. What is a subject and what is an object? And in order to do this, we have to do what is called the bread test. And the bread test is to check out whether you know the difference between yourself and a bread, and a piece of bread. So I'm not quite sure if you do. And so let's do the bread test. And the bread test consists of defining the subject and defining the object, and see if you can see the difference. And if you can, you have passed the bread test. So let's start with the object. What is an object? An object is a thing, like the little gizmo here that I use for my video. That's an object, and it has location in time and space. It has a form, it has a shape, it has a weight. It had a beginning. Someone made this once upon a time, and it's also going to have an end. Someone is going to destroy it or throw it away or burn it or whatever is going to happen to it. So this is an object. It has location, and in many ways, it's a dead thing. You cannot talk to it, or it doesn't have consciousness. But it doesn't know anything about it. You cannot hold it responsible. If it doesn't work, I cannot start screaming to it. I cannot hold it responsible. And so a bread has the same qualities. It has location, it has a beginning, someone made it. And what you can do with a bread is that you can cut it in two, and you will have two half breads. And you can even cut it in slices, and it will still maintain its essence as bread. And you can own the bread, and you can do with the bread what you want, as long as you own it, or maybe you made it yourself, and so on. And if it tastes bad, you cannot blame the bread, but you will have to have a talk with the baker and hear what he has to say to his defense. So this is an object, and has a beginning, has an end, has a place in time and space, and so on. So that's an object. And when it comes to a human being, what is a human? The body. Am I the body? I can experience my body, and so I would say I'm not my body. I'm not my thoughts. I can experience my thoughts. I am the awareness. But it's obvious when you come to a human being, say, well, can you cut a human being in half and then you will get two humans? No, you won't. You will still be a complete human being, even though if you lose your arms and your legs and there's only your head left, and someone looking out through your eyes, you will still be a fully human being. So it's not the physical body that makes us into a human. And it's not our thoughts. It's not our thoughts that makes us into a human, or our feelings, but it's our presence, our consciousness, our awareness. And that's our subjective quality. And that makes us into a subject, that we are responsible for our actions. And there is someone there. When you look into someone's eyes, you see there is a living consciousness, there is a living presence, there is existence. And those are kind of very intangible because they're not objects. Existence is not an object. The subject is completely different from the object. And then the question comes, well, where is the subject? Can you find the subject anywhere in the brain? There is no place. You cannot detect that there is a chemical substance or that you cannot reduce the subject into an object. That's, logically impossible. And so the thing is that the subject, my existence, my awareness, does not have a beginning. It does not have a location in time and space. So that's good news when it comes to death, right? Okay, well, the body is going to die, that's for sure, because the body exists in time and space. The body is an object. But I, as consciousness, I am a subject. I am awareness. So what about the thoughts? Are the thoughts subject or an object? Well, the thoughts is electromagnetic waves in the same sense as a computer. What is happening on a computer is objects. It's electricity. It's physical. It's objects. What about emotions? Is a subject or object? No, it's objects. And this solves the whole riddle of the body-mind connection, or the hard body-mind problem, because there is only two categories, and I am everything apart from me are objects. And so this is the allergy of the swimming pool and the waves, in the sense that I am the water in the swimming pool and everything else are the waves. Waves are coming and going, but the water is permanent, or like the ocean. The ocean, I am the ocean is the subject, and the ocean is the cause of the waves, not the other way around. It's not the waves that is causing the ocean. So the ocean is independent of the waves, but the waves are not independent of the ocean. It is dependent on the ocean. So this is the relationship between subject and object. And the thing is that the object is only the subject in another form. Okay? So the subject, being consciousness, being awareness, can express itself through objects. That is what will happen when we dream at night. That consciousness produces objects of experience. And so you could say that awareness without an object, that is consciousness. And awareness with an object, that's called an experience. So all experiences are objects. And consciousness, I am the subject. Did you get it? Okay. So if you think you are the body, if you think you are this person with a name, a place to live, identity, nationality, sex, age, so on, if you think that is who you are, you don't see the difference between you and a bread. Then you're confused, and you think you are an object. You think you are as a bread. Not necessarily dumb as a bread, but you get it confused. You confuse consciousness of who you really are with the object. But you're not alone on this. This confusion is called ignorance. It's a very technical term, and it doesn't mean that you don't know about cities of the world, or that you could be very intelligent. You can be extremely intelligent, but you will still be ignorant if you make this confusion and you don't understand who you are. Okay? And so the bread test is to determine whether you know the difference between the subject and the object, and when you do, you're not ignorant anymore. But as long as you get this confused, you're ignorant. So now that we've discovered that we are ignorant and that our basic problem is the confusion between subject and object, and that we get, as long as we think the world is real, and as long as I think I'm this person, I'm ignorant of who I am. And a basic premise here, when you investigate the world, is that the world is non-dual. It's called Advaita Vedanta. Advaita means non-dual. Dvaita means dual. Advaita means not dual. So the thing is that there is only one reality. There is only one reality, one existence, one consciousness. It's not like everybody has different consciousness. There is just one consciousness. Like, you can compare it to electricity, in the sense that there is only one electricity. There is millions and millions of light bulbs and electrical appliances and so on, but they all run on the same electricity. And so if a light bulb stops working, it's no big deal. You just change the light bulb. It's not the electricity is going to be unaffected. And so the thing is that reality is non-dual. There is no separation in reality. And in case there is a separation, please tell me, how does this separation occur? And that's that's an underlying premise in this knowledge, that the world is non-dual, that there is a unity, there is no separation whatsoever. But that is what happens with ignorance. When you get the subject and the object confused, then you have dualism and you have separation. And that is how I experience. My view on the world is dualistic, because when I think I am an object, I'm separate from the world. I'm separate from the outside. And that creates a huge problem, and it creates a deep feeling of alienation. And it's basically the cause of my suffering and the cause of all my problems, is this misunderstanding that I'm having a dualistic perspective on myself and the world. And so this is what happens when that's the cause of that's the basic root of the ignorance, that we live in a non-dual reality, but through our ignorance it looks like it's dualistic. This is how I perceive the world. When I see another person, I feel, okay, there's another. I feel separate from this person. But another way of seeing this, if you look at a film and you have the actors on the screen, you could say that it looks like Nicole Kidman is different from Tom Cruise. Okay, it looks like it's two separate people on the screen. But when you investigate it, you will see that they both consist of the same light source. Both are consisting of light being projected onto the screen. So there is no separation between Tom Cruise and Nicole, because it's just light, the same light in different forms. And that's the same with this world, that it's just one consciousness, one light source projecting this world. But because we think the world is real, we experience the world as being separate. We experience ourselves separate from other people. We experience ourselves separate from objects, furniture, cars, mountains, flowers, and so on. But if we investigate it, we will see that I am the world. I'm one with the world. I can dissolve this separation of ignorance. This is an old story. It's expressed in many myths, and basically the story about Adam and Eve in the Bible is an expression of this separation, of how dualism came into the world. It's called they call it the fall of sin, or something like that. So in the beginning there was the Garden of Eden, where everything was harmony and peace, and animals and everybody was living in peace, and that is kind of an image of the non-dual state, where animals in many ways are still in a non-dual state, in the sense they haven't made this separation as much as we humans has. But what happens is that when Eve, they blame the women on this, but anyway, the female is the female power, which is the Shakti, which is the life force. So anyway, she eats the fruit of the tree of knowledge between good and evil, which was forbidden to eat from. Okay, and so what happened was that they became conscious, they became self-aware. And how did they become conscious? Yeah, well, how did God know that? How did God know that they ate from the tree of knowledge? Well, okay, he should be omniscient and know everything, but still, they became shy after they've eaten of the tree of knowledge. And you become shy because you all of a sudden have concepts. Animals are not shy because they don't care whether they're naked or not, but humans do, because we have concepts of certain parts of the body are kind of impure, or we kind of feel shy about certain parts of the body. But that you need concepts and ideas in order to imagination, in order to have that kind of ideas about yourself. And so this is how we create our whole world for ourselves, through our minds, through our concepts. We put names on everything, and therefore then we cannot experience things the way they are anymore. You cannot, the moment you put a name on a flower, you're not experiencing the flower, you're just experiencing the word of a rose, right? As Gertrude Stein tried to make up by saying the rose is a rose is a rose, like the closest you get to a rose is the actual experience of it, not the concept of it. So anyway, so that was when the shit hit the fan in the Garden of Eden, where we ate of the tree of knowledge, and we got kicked out of the paradise because we became dualistic. Our view of the world became dualistic, and that happens through our minds. But still, it still was an improvement, because we're not driven by our instincts anymore, and so I think it was a good thing. I don't consider the Adam and Eve as a historic event. I consider it a symbolic story for sure, but it is an illustration of that basically the world is non-dual, and that duality is a creation of the mind. The duality is just a perspective. It's a mental perspective, and it's a mental construction of the world, which is basically wrong. That the world is non-dual, reality is non-dual, but through our minds, through our concepts, we create this imaginary world, and we become victimized by it, completely victimized by it, and therefore we are slaves. We are in prison. We are in prison of our own minds. And that's why Plato used this illustration of the slaves in the cave. They were chained to the floor through their ignorance. And that is, unfortunately, our predicament. But the good thing is that the old man is here. The Vedas and the knowledge of spiritual traditions are here to clarify and remove our ignorance, which is the basic project of all spirituality, is to remove ignorance and become free. And but we will come to that, because it's not so easy to get free, because it's so ridiculously easy. That's the hard part of it. But we will come to that. So life became suffering after Adam and Eve was expelled from the Garden of Eden. And the reason it became suffering was because the dualistic worldview was installed through living through the minds and not living through the instincts. It gave us freedom, the freedom of choice. But at the same time, as you get freedom of choice, it also creates anxiety and fear, because you can always do mistakes. You can always choose wrong, right? And so this is with this dualistic approach, the main problem is that it creates a feeling of lack, that I feel separated and I feel that I lack something all the time. I feel empty. And therefore, I chase experiences, I chase confirmation of myself all the time. I try to have a good time, because I'm alienated from my own being, and I don't appreciate, or I haven't investigated what true happiness and true satisfaction really is. So I seek satisfaction through enjoyment of objects, and I try to avoid pain to have kind of negative experiences. So my life is driven by desires. And that was the Buddha was very concerned about the human suffering, and that was his main quest, in saying, what is the cause of suffering? And the short answer after Buddha's enlightenment was that the cause of suffering is desires. But you have to go deeper and ask, what is the cause of desires? And the cause of desires is dualism, is the sense of separation. It's the sense of feeling unfulfilled, of always something missing. I don't have contentment. I only can seek satisfaction. And so the problem with satisfaction, there's a big problem with satisfaction. Well, the thing is that satisfaction is nice, and I become genuinely happy when I get satisfied. When I get what I want, I get happy. But the problem with satisfaction is that it never lasts, because satisfaction exists in time and space. So it's like a piece of music. There is a nice part of the music, but then when the satisfaction wears off, then there becomes longing after experiencing it one more time. And the stronger this longing becomes, it's pain. It's painful. And so normally it is that the stronger the satisfaction, the stronger the longing, or the more pain will come. Like, I had this amazingly love relationship that lasted for 3 months, right? And so it was a wonderful time. This beautiful, gorgeous woman wanted to be with me, and we had such a good time, and everything was nice, and drinking wine in the sunset and going for walks and really enjoying ourselves. And then all of a sudden, boom, then she got tired of me, and I was ditched, right? And so after those 3 months, there's been three years of pain, right? Wanting this experience back. Okay, so then I have to ask myself, was it worth it? So that's the big disappointment of desires, that we actually just have one problem in life, just one problem. Well, apart from the dualistic view, but once that is installed, you end up with one problem, and that problem is you don't always get what you want. That's the reason everybody goes to a therapist or even the dentist or the astrologer or anybody who can solve my problem. And my problem is always, I don't have enough money, I don't have enough love, I don't have enough experiences, I don't have enough satisfaction. Like the Rolling Stones sang, I can't get no satisfaction. Okay, that's the basic problem. And when you do get satisfaction, it's another disappointment, because after a very short time, you want something else. And then it wasn't the satisfaction always wears off. And so what is much better is to seek contentment. That contentment that is always there, which is actually attainable, which is the goal we're really searching for. We're not looking for satisfaction, we're looking for contentment. But so this is this is the cause of suffering, and there is two more limitations to our freedom or search for freedom, because it's actually freedom we want. Freedom is our basic, desire, and the only desire that is worthwhile. But because we don't want to be rich, that's not what we want. We want to get free from poverty. We want to be free from the limitation of not being able to buy what we want. And we don't want love because we just want to be limited. We don't want to be free from the limitation of not being loved or being lonely and being isolated. And whatever, but our basic need is to search for security and for freedom and so on. Okay, but anyway, but apart from the main basic problem, I cannot always get what I want. There's also a limitation that I'm going to die, that the body's going to die one day. That's a limitation. And another limitation is ignorance, in the sense that it's frustrating to live a life we do not understand. We're curious, We're curious if something goes on, we run to the window to see what's happening. That's really the amazing thing about humans, that we're curious. It's a really fantastic asset, because otherwise we'll just be lazy and just not going to get anywhere. We're extremely curious and extremely creative because of our curiosity. But our curiosity is an attempt to overcome the limitation of not knowing. And because also knowing applies to giving us security, which is our basic need. So these three things are limiting our freedom: the concept that I'm going to die, that the body is going to die, and that I cannot always get what I want, and that I live my life I do not understand. So this is suffering, and the basic cause of suffering is my feeling of alienation, or my feeling of emptiness, because of the dualistic view of myself. And so the whole quest of solving the problem of suffering is the spiritual quest. That is what spirituality is all about. And so when Buddha, through his four noble truths, the first noble truth is the actuality of suffering, and the next one is the cause of suffering, and the last one is that there is a way. The third one is there is a way to end the suffering, and the fourth one is here is the way, folks. And then he came up with what was called the Eightfold Path and so on, which is a practical direction of how to end the suffering. Buddhism doesn't have monopoly on this. There is several recipes, but basically it's the same recipe in different variations. And the first one is to get rid of your ignorance. Ignorance is what is liberating. Ignorance is going to, if you can solve get rid of the ignorance, you're going to solve the problem. That's the method. There is a way to solve the problem of suffering, to solve the predicament of dualism, to realize the non-dual reality. And there is several paths to do this. And there is basically two paths. And this is described, for instance, in the Bhagavad Gita, that there is the path of knowledge called Jnana Yoga, and there is the path of action called Karma Yoga. And so in the Bhagavad Gita, it's if you read the second chapter, it starts with Krishna giving this, Arjuna is this warrior, and he's standing in the middle of a battlefield, and he's have this breakdown because he realizes that it's all his family and friends who is on the other side, and he's going to go to war, and he doesn't want to kill, and he gets confused, and Krishna is his guide and going to help him. And so they have this dialogue in front of this, just before this battle going to start. This is, of course, a symbolic story, because the battle is the battle in our own minds. And Krishna is this divine guidance here, who's trying to straighten Arjuna out, so Arjuna know what to do and how to act. And so, but what Krishna starts out doing is to give this thunder talk on non-dualism, and he just puts it straight to Arjuna, says that the wise grieves neither for the living nor the dead, which you need to have this view implemented in order to understand that there is no grief in dying in the same way as there is no grief in a light bulb, that a light bulb doesn't work anymore. You just change it to another. So if you identify with consciousness and who you really are, life and death is not that big deal. It's just two sides of the same coin, and you're unaffected by life and death. It doesn't, consciousness is unaffected. But anyway, but this is the start of the Bhagavad Gita, that this non-dual worldview is being presented, and Krishna is giving the knowledge directly to Arjuna. But the problem is that, so this is the knowledge path. This is, if you can understand ignorance, you can understand who you are, you can become free. That's the direct path, knowledge path, okay? But Arjuna, he doesn't get it, which most people don't. Because we're still identified by being a person, still identified by being this body, the thoughts, feelings, and so on, and we're still, deeply ignorant and deeply connected to the dualistic world. This is how you experience the world, dualistic. And so, therefore, Krishna comes up with a second teaching, and the second teaching is karma yoga, the yoga of action. And so, in the yoga of action, you accept that the world is dualistic. You accept that, okay, this is the rules that we're going to play by. We're going to play by the dualistic rules. So how then are you going to act? Then you will have a different spiritual path. Simple as that. And so then there is these two paths. You can either go directly straight to the path of knowledge, and not very many people are qualified for that. And so therefore, as most people should do karma yoga, the yoga of action. You could divide karma yoga into two other paths, which is the path of love and devotion, bhakti yoga, and also the path of Raj yoga, which is the yoga of techniques. And so, but they are all actions too. If you light candles and you pray and you sing for God and so on, and you live with devotion, it's also a form of action, which is also based on dualism, but which is also inherent in most religions. Most religions are completely dualistic. Like Christianity, there is a fundamental separation between God and the human and me, and that's dualism. That God is something outside of me, or I am something outside of God. No, in a non-dual perspective, there is no separation between me and God. I am God, I'm an expression of God. There is nothing that is not God. Reality is God is just in another form. That's all. God has two forms, as unmanifested and manifested. And so, but anyway, so that's the knowledge perspective. But we're in the dualistic world now, and therefore we are karma yogis. We should do the path of action, and then there is certain rules for how the karma yoga works, and basically it is try to do your actions as an offering, leaving no traces in what you do, and trying to remove the ego out of the picture. That's very difficult, because the whole dualistic approach is this identification and clinging to being an ego. So karma yoga is basically to offer your actions to God, but you can just try to work without leaving traces. Just do what is necessary. Can you like an animal? Like animals are instinctive. They just do what is necessary to do. They live out dharma. They live out the life force. And so if we can live spontaneously and free, we will not do harm. But we do harm all the time, because all our actions is motivated through the ego and creates disturbance. So that's our predicament. So karma yoga is instructions for how to act in the world, simple as that, and as a way to liberations. But and also bhakti yoga and Raj yoga, which is the techniques like yoga, meditation, relaxation, concentration, and so on. singing mantras and whatever. So there's many paths that you can do in order to liberate yourself, in order to find freedom. But as I say, basically two paths: the path of yoga, path of knowledge, and the path of action. And the path of action is a preparation for the understanding. And so when the mind becomes clear, the mind becomes calm, when the ego is kind of reduced and you can see things as they are, the mind will open to this understanding. And that is the foundation of all spiritual practice. And so find out, but most people, very few people can go the direct path, because there is so many subconscious patterns that needs to be worked out through meditation, through practice, through self-reflection, through self-inquiry, and so on. So it's a longer process. And so we're mostly are karma yogis because we live in the dualistic world, and we have to play by the rules in this world. As long as we believe that this world is real, we have to play by the rules of the world. So what is spiritual practice? So, yes, the problem or the challenge of enlightenment or becoming free is that I am free already. I am looking for something that I already have. So, in principle, there is absolutely nothing I can do to become enlightened. What I should do is to remove my ignorance. That's the only recipe. So all I need to do is just sit down and quiet my mind and just be, and then I'm there. But that's not going to happen, because I'm so programmed into my ignorance. The ignorance is so hardwired that I have to do something else. I will have to do something. But how do you get rid of ignorance? You know, does it help to eat vegetarian food? Does it help to stand on my head? Does it help to go for a walk every day? Or does it help to go on pilgrimage? Does it help to pray? There's no actions that can remove ignorance. The only removal of ignorance is knowledge. And so you end up with this enormous misunderstanding in the spiritual world that enlightenment is an experience, and it's not. In one sense, it is an experience, but the dualism has to go, in the sense that if there is an experience and there is an experiencer, it's dualism. But it is actually possible to have an experience without an experiencer. This can sound logically impossible, because this is an experience beyond the mind, beyond the intellect. It's a form of transcendence. But it's not that alien, because we have experienced it, or we do experience it frequently. We have small moments of ecstasy where we're not present, or the observer is not present anymore. Like you can experience it in dancing, like you're dancing, and all of a sudden me as a person is gone, and there is only the dance. But then all of a sudden the mind steps in and says, wow, this looks amazing. I hope someone takes pictures of me now or something, or I hope someone sees me. And then you're all of a sudden out of the experience. Or you see something amazing view in nature, all of a sudden there's this short moment where there is just oneness, that you are just one with what is happening, and the person is kind of completely out of the picture. So this is a taste of the ecstatic state of awareness being self-aware. So this is the process of enlightenment, is to transcend the mind. And you cannot do it by will, in the same sense that you cannot fall asleep at night at will. You can only prepare yourself. You can make preparations for going to sleep. That's why we normally have nice bedrooms, we have nice bedclothes, and we like to furnish the bedroom nice and clean, because we appreciate we like to sleep, we appreciate the sleep. But we cannot force the sleep to happen. We can only prepare ourselves. And the same goes with enlightenment. You cannot force yourself to do it. And the more action you do, the more you actually just increase the separation and your ignorance. So you'll just have to let go of your concepts, let go of your beliefs, let go of your identifications, and just be. That's the challenge of it. So the whole spiritual paths is this preparation for enlightenment, and that's all you can do. You can prepare for it and hope that it happens by God's grace or whatever it takes. And you could say, so spiritual practice is no guarantee for enlightenment, but it's pretty much guaranteed that it's not going to happen without. And so there is something to do. It's important to have a spiritual practice if you have ambitions of becoming enlightened or if you want to be free. So, but there is a big trap which I went into for a long time, and this trap is called spiritual mountain climbing. And I had that concept of that spirituality is like climbing a steep mountain, and on the top of this mountain, Buddha and Jesus and all the big shots in the spiritual world are sitting on the top of the mountain, and everyone else is climbing up that mountain and trying to get higher and higher up to the summit. And when you reach there, you hit the jackpot and you become this absolutely amazing person, and you get all powerful and shining, and people will love you and throw money on you, and all the women will flock to you, and so on. So it's really a goal worth striving for, right? And which I did. I lived in an ashram, and I did lots of yoga, and I got powers and whatnot, and so I started to teach yoga, and then I became what I would call a spiritual snob, because I thought that I was better than my students. I had come higher up the mountain, so I was, okay, I was not kind of enlightened or anything like that, but I was still, beyond base camp, so I could look down on others because they had not come that far as I had. And so I enter this spiritual hierarchy, and you get the more kind of experiences you have, and the brighter your aura and so on, the cooler you look, the more status it gives. So it's a complete same thing as in society. In society there is this status pyramid, which is measured in money and how much possessions you have and popularity you have, but and this is same thing in the spiritual world, but it's just another currency, and the currency is your experiences. So this is spiritual materialism, and it's a big mistake, and that's why there are so many scandals in the spiritual world, because when you're chasing experiences, okay, you have these amazing spiritual experiences, but they wear off, as all experiences do. And then you get bored, and then you want to try something else. Then you want to have sex, you want to have power, you want to have money, and so on, and fame. And so therefore, all these yogis, they fall by the wayside because they completely misunderstand the path. They think that is all about experience. And experiences are endless. And therefore you have all these scandals, and it's very few, with few exceptions, who are of yogis and masters and so on, who is not being seduced by this, And I would probably, I'm absolutely sure I'm going to fail for the same things, if I get up there, right? And so therefore, it's just so easy to keep your tongue in check here and have the right perspective on spirituality. So the thing is that when you have this perspective that I am already free, that there is no hierarchy. I'm not going anywhere because I am already at my destination. So there is no hierarchy whatsoever. All I need to do is to remove my ignorance, and then I'm free. So, but of course you could probably make another hierarchy out of that. I mean, who has removed more ignorance than others? But actually, it is an awakening in the sense that either you remove your ignorance or not. It's a complete. It's like the rope and the snake story. Once you see the rope, you cannot go back and seeing the snake anymore. So that is the complete awakening. Then it becomes a complete reality for you that this is a dream, this is a illusion. I am consciousness. When that is your it's just clear as anything, like your berries in your hand or whatever. Then you are awakened. So it's a big trap to fall for experience and not having a clear perspective on what spiritual practice is. So it is not I as a person who become free. It's the other way around. I as consciousness, I become free of the person that I think I am. I realize that this person that I think I am is a mental construction. It's an illusion. And when I become free of that, then I'm free. Then I can see the world as it is. And I can live spontaneously, unaffected by the world. And I can act out of pure love. I can act spontaneously in the world. That is liberation. And there are exceptional people who have realized this, and they are lighthouses for others who can draw inspiration and can learn from their knowledge and learn from their experience. But the spiritual world is a jungle out there. There is a lot of confused teaching and a lot of confused teachers, and there's very few who has this straight. Who doesn't fall for the various traps of money, sex, and power, and so on. And it's very few who's not kind of subscribing to the spiritual mountain climbing. So when you remove yourself from that circus, you can start becoming real, and you can start getting onto authentic practice and find a meaning in the spiritual practice. So what happened to me was that I became disillusioned. I've been meditating for 40 years, and I said, well, look, I've been meditating for 40 years. I'm the same jerk as I've been all the time. This is going nowhere. And I became so disillusioned. I was about to just throw out the whole thing and say, no, this is going nowhere. And then fortunately, I was exposed to Advaita Vedanta, to this teaching, and fortunately found a very inspiring teacher who is James Schwartz, which I think is very, very good for beginners. He explains Vedanta in a very, very clear way. So I was hanging out with him for a long time and got kind of this perspective. So he was the old man who pointed out that it's not the snake, it's the rope. So I'm very thankful for him. But I have kind of moved on to other teachers, which I think has some deeper aspects to the teaching than I think that he presents. But anyway, that's way, way, way down the line. So in the beginning, as here, it's only a matter of just getting the perspectives right, and this is a place to start. So the thing is that so this teaching will come when you keep searching, but there is a main difference here between spiritual materialism, where you chase experiences and you chase objects, apart from realizing that you are already free, and your main project is to remove ignorance. we dealt with spiritual practice, and it's important to have a spiritual practice because it cleanses the mind and it prepares. It's a preparation that liberation can happen. It's not a guarantee that it can happen, but it's probably a guarantee that it won't happen without. So, spiritual practice of having the right view and having a meditation practice and all your actions is being aware of all your actions and how you live your life is a spiritual practice and is the foundation for solving the basic problem of suffering. But you need to be qualified. I mean, some teacher says that enlightenment can happen anywhere to anyone, and there is no logic to it. There is a logic to it, and you need to be qualified. And some people, we are to a certain extent qualified through our karma. And if you have been hanging out with this video so far, you definitely have qualifications, because otherwise you would have been bored long time ago. And so you have a strong qualification just to be motivated, or just to be interested in this question of who you are, just to be interested in this topic and reflecting on these issues is a qualification in itself. That means that you are prepared. Your soul is longing for this. We want this knowledge, and so traditionally there is 10 qualifications, or okay, there could be more or less, but let's do 10 of the more kind of traditional famous qualification. And the first qualification is discrimination. And discrimination means distinguishing between the subject and the object, is to analyze, self-reflect, do self-inquiry, and do the logical steps that we've been going through so far. That's called discrimination. And to separate the real from the unreal, to separate the subject and the object, and to understand how the movie house of reality works. Second qualification is the control of the mind. And once you realize that I am consciousness, I am not the content of my mind. Most people are completely slaves to their minds. Because if you think that my thoughts are real, you say things like, I am hungry. It's a complete mistake. I am not hungry. I am experiencing hunger. So thoughts, and whatever happens in the mind of sense impressions, thoughts, sounds, smells, touch, and so on, and your thoughts, memories, plans, desires, whatever, anything that goes on in the mind is objects, and I am not the objects. So when you can make that discrimination, that distinction, it's possible to control the mind, in the sense that if you feel hunger, okay, you don't need to rush to the fridge, you can wait, or you can skip a meal, or you can fast. You're stronger than your mind. You can control your mind. That's an enormous freedom, And most people are slaves to their minds. They think that they have to obey any desire that comes along, And then you destroy your mind. You destroy your life if you're being chased by your mind. And in the end, we can be completely addicted to all kinds of stuff, and lose power over ourselves. So controlling the mind, completely essential. And the third is to control the senses. That's already mentioned, in the sense that desires for sense pleasures and so on is controlling the senses. And there's a beautiful saying in the Bhagavad Gita, saying that those who does not feed the senses returns to the self, leaving the longing behind. I love that quote. Those who don't feed the senses returns to the self, meaning consciousness, leaving the longing behind. All right. So non-attachment. We get attached to our ego, to our bodies, to our desires, to our family, to ideas, political ideas, concept. We get attached to anything, because we build this mental world around ourselves, to our identity of the person I think I am, and so on. That's attachment. And so that's why, like if you want to become a swami or a sannyasin, you take these rigorous vows of like if you're going to be a sannyasin in the Indian tradition, you take a vow that you can only ask for food once a day. You're not allowed to touch money. You're not allowed to live in a place more than 3 days. Okay. Can you imagine of having absolutely no nets of security? You don't have money, and you can only have your clothes, and you walk, and you can only trust other people that they will give you food if you ask for it twice a day. So that's to test yourself if you can live completely non-attached. So in our extreme comfortable lives, that's really, really, really tough. So that's probably not where we should start. We should start by kind of letting go our desires, letting go our fixed ideas, and so on. So there's many ways we can practice non-attachment. So an important qualification is to follow your dharma. Means dharma means what is natural, what is the way, what is the order of the universe. That's dharma. Like it's the dharma of the sun to shine and be warm. It's the dharma of a chess player to play chess. It's the dharma of a lion to hunt to survive, and so on. And dharma is not fixed in the sense that it's what is right to do at any moment. So sometimes it's right to fight, to show aggression, to defend yourself can be your dharma, and other times it's not your dharma to do violence. So dharma is this inherent knowledge of direction in each of our own lives, and there is a collective dharma of the whole world, and there is a individual dharma to our own lives. And so follow your dharma means that you should live your own life. As it says in the Bhagavad Gita, it's better to live your own life bad than to live other people's lives good. So so the thing is that you have to tune into your own truths and follow your dreams and do what you came here to do. And this is a concept that we do. I believe that we do have a soul, in the sense that there is a deeper karmic purpose to our lives, and we come into this world with a sense of purpose, and there is tasks and challenges that we're supposed to do, and we can meet those challenges or we can avoid them. And when we do, we're not true to ourselves. So finding this truth is it's not kind of written anywhere, but you will find it in your heart by opening but your subconscious and your soul will tell you, because when you're on the wrong path, bad things start happening to you. You get accidents, people are nasty to you, things doesn't go your way, you start getting obnoxious dreams and so on. So there's all possible ways that, or particularly you feel you don't feel right and so on. So when you are on the right track in your life, you feel that you are where you should be in your life. So finding your dharma, follow your dharma, is a qualification. Earnestness means that you should do this with intensity. This is just not a hobby. When you really discover this and you really get a desire for being free, you do this wholeheartedly. There's nothing more important than this. So that's earnestness. You really do it fully. Forbearance means a certain tolerance that you should accept. You should accept what happens in life. If you really want to have peace, that can solve all your problems if you can just accept life. Forbearance, if you can accept whatever happens, and not being driven by your ego, that the ego wants to have reality on his own terms. It's bound to be a big, big, big disappointment. So if you can go with the flow and accept life, that's key to the highway, for sure. Trust. Trust is very important in the sense that you could also call it faith. This is not a religion. So there is nothing to believe, but you need to have trust. You need to have trust in this tradition. You need to have trust in the knowledge, because you're not able to do every day the logical steps, but you need to rely on this knowledge, and in the beginning you need to trust it. When eventually you realize you don't need any traditions, you don't need the teaching anymore, but because you will realize these things through your own experience. So it's not a belief anymore, and it's not a religion. It's a purely logical investigation of reality on how of your own experience. Another qualification is devotion, and you have to do it from your heart. It's not enough just to be intellectual. Although it's good to the intellect is still the strongest power of the mind, in the sense that all your actions is being determined by your intellect. And when people say, well, you got to follow your heart, well, that's good. Yeah, it's true, you got to follow your heart, but it's still an intellectual saying. It's still the intellect that says, oh, I'm going to follow my heart. So, but anyway, of course, the heart is beyond the words, the emotions is beyond the words. But it's really important to try to connect emotionally, and that it goes through our love, through our devotion to the practice, and devotion to knowledge, and devotion and love is essentially my own nature. That consciousness is love, my being is love. So what is meant by love? Love is not a feeling. Love is presence. And whatever I give my presence to, that's what I love. If I sit in front of the computer all day, that's what I love. If I walk in nature all day or often, that's what I love. If I am with my children, that's who I love. If I am with my partner, that's whom I love. Isn't that what the partner says? Oh, you don't love me anymore because you just watching TV all day. So it means that if you don't give attention to your partner, the partner will experience, well, I don't love you anymore. So love is this very misused word that people connect to all kinds of sentimental, rosy feelings and so on, but it's not really a feeling, it's your presence, which is love. And so consciousness is love, and in the sense that it's good to be alive. It's good to exist. If my nature was to be depressed, I would be happy when I got depressed. But in fact, my own being is bliss, is a blissful nature. And that's where I want to be. So if I can just get rid of all my thoughts, then I will be happy. And that's what happens when I get what I want. I remember once I fell in love with a gorgeous woman. We dated each other on the internet, and she sent these pictures and so on, and we became madly in love with each other. And I became extremely happy. Because before that, I had these periods of loneliness. I felt lonely. I needed a woman in my life. And so when she said, well, I want to be with you, I became extremely happy. But the point was that she was traveling a lot. So actually I had to wait for 3 weeks before we could meet each other. But for those 3 weeks, I was extremely happy. And then the question is, well, where did that happiness come from? Because I hadn't met the woman yet. Okay. And so obviously the happiness has to come from myself. And so what is happening is that I have this desire, I have this lack. I'm telling myself I'm lacking something. I feel lonely. I lack a partner. And so when the partner comes, or when she just says that I'm going to step into your life, then the feeling of lack disappears. The desire disappears. And what happens is that my true nature shines forth, just like the sun when you remove the clouds. So my nature is bliss and happiness, but it's being disturbed by my desires and my concepts, or my dualistic concepts of that I lack something, because I don't. I am whole and complete. That's my nature, and that is love. So that's the heart of devotion, so which is important to include in the practice and is an important qualification. The last qualification is a desire, a burning desire for liberation. A burning desire for liberation. There is a story of Ramakrishna who there is a student who asked, well how important, how much desire for liberation should one have? And Ramakrishna, he didn't answer the question, but later they went down to the Ganges and had a morning bath, and when the disciple had his one head under the water, Ramakrishna pushed his head down, and so he became completely desperate and he thought he was going to drown. And then after some time, Ramakrishna let go of his head, and so he came to the surface, and Ramakrishna said, well, this is the answer to your question. As much as you wanted to survive and to have air when I held you under the water, that is how much you wanted have to desire liberation. So, we're not there. Most people are not there, but we do have a desire for liberation. And what I've experienced in my life is that it started out kind of slow, like a fire, in the sense that a fire starts out slow like a burning candle, and then it starts to expand. And so once you get this knowledge, the desire for liberation really catches on, and it becomes more and more burning. So that can happen, and when you get true knowledge, I don't think this flame is going to die. It's a one-way road. When you started this, there is no going back. So burning desire for liberation, but that is very individual for each person, but you can cultivate it, and the more knowledge you get, and the deeper you go into the path, and the more you realize, because what is happening is that you become aware of the suffering. You become aware of the limitations and the dissatisfaction of dualism. You become aware of this emptiness and this feeling of alienation, and the inherent suffering of just identifying by being this person. And so these, it gives you a sense of meaning to your life, that you have to solve this suffering, right? And there is peace to be attained. There is permanent contentment to be attained in the process of spiritual practice, and in the process of finding true peace and freedom and liberation. So, burning desire for liberation. Once you have a burning desire for liberation, the teaching or the teacher will appear. It's called, when the disciple is ready, the guru appears. And the problem is not the gurus, the problem is the disciple, in the sense that there are gurus, there are teachers out there, and they're longing to have disciplined disciples. And so a disciple is a person who is able to discipline himself and to have a practice. And so this is the qualification that we can work on ourselves, in the sense that we can become disciples, in the sense that we are disciplined in our lives, and then we will attract the knowledge. We will attract the right students or the right teacher for us. But a guru doesn't necessarily need to be a man with a beard, or a swami, or a sannyasin, or whatever. But life itself is a guru. Life teaches us all the time, and but our responsibility is to do our part of the work, and our part of the work is to be a good disciple. And where we're a good disciple, we will attract the right teacher. There are many meditation techniques, and when people ask what is the best meditation technique, I'll tell you right away. The best meditation technique you can ever have is the one that you do every day. That's the best meditation technique. So meditation is in principle very easy. It's like running or jogging or even going for a walk in nature. I mean, everybody can do it. And it's a complete natural process. And it's not really a matter of what kind of jogging shoes you have or what kind of trainer you have to jog. So what gives the effect is to actually to do it and to have a regular practice. And so there are many different meditation techniques, and the techniques are not the most important thing. And also often the most simple thing can be used. Like the Buddha, he had just a very simple practice. He just watched his breath. That was all what he did. But he sat himself down under the tree, the Bodhi tree in Bodh Gaya, and with a firm resolution that he was going to sit here until he died, unless he got the answer to what the meaning of life is. And so after 7 days or something, I can't remember, maybe it was 3 days, I don't know what the story says, but he was meditating night and day, and finally his mind opened to the fully realization. But anyway, we don't have that determination when we sit down to meditate, but we do have the determination that I'm going to sit for a certain period of time. So when you start to meditate, you decide, I'm going to sit here now for the next 20 minutes or the next half hour or the next hour or whatever, how long you want to do it. Don't do it more than 1 hour if you're a beginner. So you can do like just Zazen, the Zen Buddhistic practice, which is very, very simple. Just sit, nothing else, just sit. It's a very powerful practice, and you just watch whatever happens of thoughts, feelings, restlessness, and you get completely non-attached, and you don't have any expectations of anything special to happen or anything. You just sit. That's all. Just sit. And okay, sit still, straight. You can watch your breath, but just sit. And eventually, the person will disappear, in the sense that there's no person anymore. There's just sitting. Okay, so you become one with the trees, the mountains, it's very nice. It's very nice to do this practice outside. If you can sit in nature and just sit, okay, just like a stone in nature. So that's a very simple meditation practice. So, but I would divide a meditation practice into three stages. And the first stage is relaxation, the second stage is concentration, and the third stage is meditation. And so what passes for meditation these days is basically relaxation. So mindfulness, for instance, which has become more or less synonymous with meditation, is basically relaxation. You sit down, you close your eyes, and you just watch the mind. You just watch whatever passes of thoughts, feelings, memories, that you talk to yourself, and so on. And that's the first stage of just calming your body and calming your mind. And that's a good practice, a very powerful practice. And what happens in the first stage is that you cannot avoid to become aware that I am the witness. You cannot avoid to notice that there are the sounds, and I am aware of hearing the sounds. There are thoughts, and I'm aware of having thoughts. There are feelings, I'm aware of having feelings. I'm talking to myself, I'm aware of talking to myself. So that is the practice. And it's very good to establish the witness, in the sense that I am awareness, I'm conscious, I'm sitting here, I'm doing my practice. So that's the first stage, called mindfulness. And this gives you, even though you stop here, it gives you over time, it gives you a calmness and a peace, has a whole lot of physiological and psychological benefits, and it gives you a sense of security and self-confidence. Confidence is just resting in yourself. So it's a great practice and highly recommended. So the next stage of meditation is called concentration. And then you, in a sense, you go deeper in order to that. You wanted to provoke your mind. You introduce an object of concentration. It can be a mantra, it can be a symbol, it can be a special thought, it can be chakras of the body, or it can be the breath. There's no limits to what kind of objects of concentration can be introduced to the mind, or combinations of objects and so on. But it's the principle is to have an object to concentrate on, and then the mind will protest, because the mind is like a drunk monkey. It wants to spontaneously jump from one thought and feeling to the next. But once you start disciplining your mind and say, no, hey, stop, you're going to just focus on this candle or just this mantra, Om Namah Shivaya, Om Namah Shivaya, Om Namah Shivaya, Om Namah Shivaya. You keep repeating the mantra over and over. And then the mind will show its content. So it will represent a certain cleansing of the mind by using an object of concentration. So all kinds of mantras you can use. Simple mantras like Om Shanti, or just Om, or you can have longer mantras like the Gayatri mantra, Om Bhur Bhurvasso Vaha Tat Savitur Varenyam Bhargo Devasya Dhimahi Dhiyo Yona Prachodayat, just to use a longer mantra to keep your mind focused. But anyway, the mantra is not that important, but find some that work. It's like a tool. You don't need to use a hammer for everything. You can have different mantras for different occasions, and you can have a personal mantra, which is like the one you hang on to the most, but you can experiment with it. You can investigate it. Anyway, so that's the second stage of meditation, and the third state of meditation is what is actually meditation, in the sense that it's concentration without an object. So, and that's kind of hard to do, but how can you concentrate on something without an object? There is no mantra anymore. There is nothing special to concentrate on. So that means that awareness is resting on itself. It's an appreciation of your own being. It's just presence. It's just awareness. So there is no technique. There is nothing you can do. There is just being. That's meditation. That's the final stage of meditation. And the longer you can stay in that presence, that can transcend the mind and eventually become liberation, samadhi, freedom. Okay? So, but that's the practice, and what I would recommend is to go through either. You can do the stages separately if you want, but I would recommend a kind of gradual 10 minutes of realization or mindfulness, 10 minutes of concentration, and 10 minutes of real meditation, of just just being. So that's a sound practice, and but you can just do mindfulness, or you can just do mantra meditation in itself. But I would really recommend those three stages, and that you have some certain perspective on what a meditation is. So it is actually this simple. And the main thing about meditation is to do it. And if you really want to have it simple, just do the Zen practice. I love that. Okay, so but if you feel that you need more knowledge in order to get a meditation practice going, there are books, and I'll probably make another series just on meditation. I'll probably do that. So there is a huge amount of information out there. There's no excuse of not starting a meditation practice. You can also do transcendental meditation if you can afford it. So that's it's ridiculously expensive to get a mantra from the Transcendental Meditation Organization, but they should really be complimented on, because there is no one who has learned more people meditation as Maharishi Mahesh Yogi, who founded the Transcendental Meditation. He was really big in the 60s and the 70s and learned the Beatles to meditate, and his golden formula of a mantra, a personal mantra, and meditation twice a day, 20 minutes, is a very, very powerful practice, and it transformed the lives literally of millions. It's a very serious organization, and they do profound work and also they have much more advanced techniques. They have the mind-blowing city program where they taught people to fly, literally. And I've seen it myself to levitate. I've seen people, they flew off half a meter off the ground. That was just totally mind-blowing. And they did that by introducing that city techniques. And now they're into world peace in the sense that they discovered the, I think it's actually called the Maharishi effect, that when enough people comes together, it reduces crime rate in society, and it's being measured. Like they've done these amazing, I can't remember the details, but it was in America, an American city where a couple of thousand people came together to meditate over a 2-week period or something like this, and they could really measure a dramatic drop in crime rates and suicide attempts and less activity on the in the hospitals, their emergency awards and so on, and an enormous harmonization of society due to this collective effort of deep meditation, of advanced meditators getting together. So all credo for that, and so meditation has a very powerful effect, not to only your individual life, but has also a collective life. So you do actually a service to the world if you have a meditation practice. So it's a huge topic, and so start meditating. That's the biggest asset you can do if you want to have a spiritual practice. Finding out who I am is much more than an intellectual endeavor. It's a process of realizing who you are. It's a process of going from self-knowledge to self-realization. And in this learning process, there are 3 stages. And the first stage is listening. And that's what's, of course, is happening in this video, that you need to get the knowledge. You need to listen to the old man in the snake and the rope story. And this you can do through various teachers who is teaching this knowledge. So it says listening, and of course you can read books, which is a form of listening. But in the tradition, it's important to have the kind of the personal experience of just taking in the knowledge through your ears, and just putting all your concepts aside. Important, because this is so radical. It's so radical to say that the world is not real. That idealism, since we're not taught idealism in school, since we're so programmed into believing that the world is real, that the physical world, we're so deeply programmed into materialism, is very, very, it's a hard process, and it's hard to grasp this knowledge because it's so contradictory to how we experience the world. Because I experience the world as dualistic, and it is a big stretch to realize and integrate and understand that the world is non-dual, and I'm basically ignorant of my nature, basically ignorant of who I am. It's a big stretch. And so the first stage is just to listening, just to try to take it in. And so the next stage is called reflecting. Means that you need to integrate this. For my own part, I spent at least 3 years, to just, so many concepts where I had to just write down a sentence and reflect it for days before it kind of sank in. I remember particularly with this one, as I said previously, that awareness without an object is consciousness, and awareness with an object is an experience. For instance, that sentence, I spent days reflecting on that sentence. And here the other day I was meditating, and this thought comes up that I am the same whether I'm living or dead. That's also kind of worth meditating on or reflecting on. That consciousness is unaffected by life and death. Or as it says in the Bhagavad Gita, there's the wise grieves neither for the living nor the dead. So it's stretched so it's radical concepts. Or like that God is like Atman, and is like in the world is God in physical form. There is nothing other than the world. God is the world in physical form, or God has two sides, as unmanifested and manifested. So the non-dual world expresses itself. This is called Maya, the illusion. And so how the consciousness, how that is able to create dualism is called Maya, and it's called what makes the impossible possible, because it's logical impossible. And reality in itself, that we're here, that we exist, is completely illogical. This is not supposed to exist, because eventually, at some point you should imagine that there was nothing, and how anything can be created from nothing is illogical, completely impossible. So basically, down the line, there is a mystery in the end of the road, and there are some questions that even these heavy duty spiritual traditions still cannot answer, and just have to take for granted. There is a reality, there is existence, there is consciousness. We cannot be denied. That's our starting point. So the last stage of the teaching is the integration, and the integration in many traditions is just synonymous with meditation. That the meditation is the way to integrate the knowledge. So you got the listening part, you got the reflecting part, where you reflect on these teachings, and you integrate it through that. It goes from knowledge to realization. Okay? And that is, you go from knowing to being. So all this teaching is ignorance, because this is a scaffolding which you throw away once you have reached the point of realization. So even this, because this is just the finger pointing to the moon, it's not the moon. Okay, this is just the menu card, but without the menu card, you're not going to get the food. Okay, so don't get too hung up in the intellectual understanding, but it's a complete necessity to have the understanding. It is a complete necessity to have the right perspective, right? So, but there are other paths, because basically it's about going beyond the mind. And for those not that intellectually inclined as this presentation is, the path of bhakti, the path of devotion, can also make you transcend the mind. Some people, like for instance Yogananda, he said that devotion was the most important path. Many people on the spiritual path will say devotion is the most important, and so actually most of the spiritual world is very anti-intellectual, really. I think that's a big mistake, because it opens the field for exploitation enormously, with all these gurus who says don't think, the mind is the problem, so therefore stop thinking, just have devotion, just trust me, a big danger, and so you got to have a critical mind, you got to use your intellect. But there are, by every way, because we are already enlightened, we are already free, so so there's many ways to get it. Also through karma yoga, through getting out the mind or the ego out of its way, and can also be liberating. So that is the process of self-realization, and it also is way down the line to have that ambition, because the beginning stage is just to find out who you are, just to ask the question, who am I, is the beginning. And in many ways it's a stupid question, because everybody knows who they are. But when you analyze it, you realize that it has enormous implications, because it's basically about asking, what is this world? What is reality? Simple as that. So, simple question, and it's the starting point of the spiritual quest, is to find out who I am, discover the cause of suffering, and discovering the path or methods to remove the suffering and become free. Now we come to the end of the road of this of these lectures here, and this is maybe just the beginning. That it has opened up a door that you can start practicing, and you can start reflecting on your own life and your own ideas about yourself, and reflecting on your true nature. So from here on, there are books, there are teachers you can follow, and but you will still have to work on this, solving this enigma, of how to be. I'm not changing in an ever-changing world. Every day there is a new change from waking state to dream state to deep to sleep states, and these experiences continues over and over. And but I am unchanged. I am unaffected. So it's an enigma how to integrate the non-dual world, the non-dual view in living in a dualistic world. It's the big challenge. The big challenge is how to live our lives. So, but this has hopefully given you some perspective on who you are and the enormous implications of this knowledge. Hopefully you will have a perspective on the idealistic worldview in deep contrast to the materialistic, reductionistic, scientific, modern day religion. This is the, it's not a belief. I think this is, this is truth in the sense that it's based on, it's a scientific investigation of our reality. It's the logical consequences of the most obvious thing, that I exist and that I'm aware. So hopefully this has given you some perspective on the most essential question of who I am. And from onwards here, you can get some more information. You can find your teachers, and because there are lots of teaching out there, there is Advaita Vedanta, several teachers who is presenting this teaching very loud and clear. And there is also the Buddhist tradition where all this with a lot of fine teachers, and there is Sufi traditions, and there's various traditions where this teaching is intact. I would still kind of be skeptical to, very skeptical to teachers who has invented this by themselves. As I've said, this is not my teaching. There is nothing here that is my kind of personal philosophy. And I'm pretty skeptical to teachers who has their own kind of package that they teach, which is some of what they're saying is true, but it's still mixed with ignorance. Because this teaching is so complex and is developed and cultivated through thousands of years that it's not possible for one single person to come up with this. And so therefore, you need this tradition to back you up and to have the foundation in an authentic tradition. So there is all reasons to be very critical to gurus and teachers. And in most people in the West, there is no traditions and training in how we should relate to wisdom traditions or gurus. And so many people, they kind of fall by the wayside and get seduced into spiritual organizations and exploited, and so whatnot, when there is not the authentic teaching present. And not that the authentic teaching is any guarantee for that not exploitation and bad things can happen, because we're humans, and humans are fallible. Even though the teaching can be there can still be humans and teachers with their own limitations and doing their own mistakes and so on. So, but basically, it's about taking responsibility for your own spiritual search, and the good thing about this knowledge is that you don't become a seeker anymore. You're not a seeker anymore. Vedanta means also the end of the Vedas, and a very kind of a little optimistic interpretation is the meaning that it's also the end of knowledge, because there is nothing after this teaching. Simple as that, because this is a complete teaching, and there is no answer. There's no question on the spiritual path that cannot be answered within this teaching. Simple as that. So because I was a spiritual searcher for a long time. I was reading Deepak Chopra. That was interesting, and Eckhart Tolle, he was interesting, and a little bit of this and a little bit of that. But I always had this sense of lack, that there was. It was always limited, that it didn't give the complete answers. But when I came on to Advaita Vedanta, then I find it is a complete teaching, and there is no, I don't need to there's nothing after that. But you don't need to get to this. We all have our own way and our own process of learning. But the main thing is to ask the question, who am I? And all kinds of magic will start from there. So thank you for listening.